Krikorian. Those items would be 6 through 9 and 11 and 12. So we are joined by Councilman Koretz, who is here on item number 2. And with that in mind, I'll take up item number 2, and hopefully Mr. Krikorian will arrive before we're finished.
Item number 2 is motion Koretz Alarcon relative to the request for city attorney with input from the CLA and the LAPD film unit to draft an ordinance which would make unpermitted filming a misdemeanor.
Do we have anybody prepared to testify on this? Oh, Mr. Koretz, I'm sure he has the longer version of your speech, so we'll hear the complete. Please, yeah, join Mr. Koretz here.
Thank you, Chairman Alarcon, for scheduling this motion, and I'd also like to thank Film LA for coming today to provide feedback on how the motion would affect our important film industry. And I'd also like to thank my constituents for reviewing this, providing feedback, and I believe there may be some residents of Encino who come to speak in support of the motion today. My office received complaints from constituents who've witnessed neighbors leasing out their properties for a variety of commercial film shoots without obtaining the proper permits from Film LA. And by subverting the permitted process, these production companies fail to provide notice to neighbors, they clog streets with their vehicles, they generally disrupt the quiet use and enjoyment of the neighborhood, and this has become a problem in certain neighborhoods. Just a few weeks ago near Coldwater Canyon, we had a troublesome production filming a TV show in a neighborhood where neighbors said there had been excessive filming. We flagged this for Film LA. Film LA investigated and found out the property had regular but not excessive permitted film shoots. But as we spoke to some of the neighbors, we discovered that there had been a number of unpermitted film shoots, and that was what was causing the problem. And again, these were unpermitted pornographic film shoots taking place at the same property for an extended period of time. So I submitted a request to Film LA to allow the property to cool off, disallow filming for 90 days, and much to my surprise and frustration, the very next weekend there was another film shoot at the property, and of course, again, unpermitted. As a city, we have the ability to punish production companies who don't obtain permits, but we currently don't have laws in place to punish property owners who knowingly and habitually rent out their property for illegal filming. Legal measures directed towards the production companies are troublesome because sometimes the production may be a one-time use, whereas the property owner may be the one allowing for continual illegal use of the property, which eventually becomes a long-term problem for the neighborhood. I believe the best way to address this problem is for the city to adopt an ordinance that would punish property owners and make them equally liable as production companies currently are for illegal filming. I understand the concern about the first violations. In some cases, people are gaming the system. They know very well what's happening, and they have dozens of days of illegal, unpermitted filming. In other cases, the property owners may not be aware of the regulations. So I think it's not a bad idea to start with a low amount of an infraction or even a warning and build up to a misdemeanor, where I think it should ultimately be if a property owner continually violates the law and ignores our regulations. So I thank you for your consideration on this. I think it's an important issue. It's certainly one that's come up many times in mine. I know it happens in other council districts as well, and I appreciate you hearing this motion.
Sure. Does LAPD want to report on this, or no? Well, first of all, this is an intent crime, right? So they have to know they were committing a crime as a misdemeanor. Yeah. Because my understanding is that a lot of unpermitted filming that goes on, the property owners have no idea that there's even a requirement to have a permit. So I would assume that would not be the target of this motion.
No, and in fact, the biggest trouble spots that we've been aware of are people that have actually done permitted filming, know it's required to be permitted, and then allow many more days of unpermitted filming at the same location.
I just don't want to get a bunch of people caught up in, getting cited when they didn't even know that the producer was supposed to have a permit.
And I don't necessarily disagree with that. That's certainly
So
not our target.
I just want to be clear. It is an intent crime, right? So,
Commissioner Halleck, my name is Captain McDonald. I'm the CO of Commanding Officer Emergency Operations Division. What I'd really like to do is introduce you to Lieutenant Ray Garvin. He's the he runs our permits unit and section. So I'm going to pass this off to Ray. He's very knowledgeable in this area.
On something like that, whether it's a general intent crime or a specific intent, I would have to defer to the city attorney because we haven't even drafted the ordinance yet. But generally, when you're getting into LAMC violations, it's violation occurred, you have the discretion to obviously educate or do enforcement like you would anything that's under a misdemeanor. So it could be the range of things that could result from that is a warning to a citation. And so I think we would have to wait to see what the proposed language of any ordinance would be in the enforcement. But primarily, right now, if say we respond to a location, it's a residence, and it's a complaint of unpermitted filming, and we get there and we verify, hey, you have no film permit. Right now, we do cite the production company. We have not been citing the homeowners. There was one case where we did cite the homeowner also, and both those and the production company at the same time. And those cases went to the Hollywood court and resulted in a city attorney hearing, which is, basically, a meeting to warn and whatnot.
So you can already cite the property owner?
Well, we have. I mean, it sounds, and again, the intent, it sounds like what we're looking for here is possibly a motion to go after these properties that are habitually problem locations. And I think the location that the councilman was talking about was a specific location that I think I personally responded to. And here's the problem with that. You have a complaint that someone's filming without a permit, and we go out there, yes, you have no permit. Unless someone reports to FilmLA or the police department about the other illegal filming activities, oftentimes the first time we're going to hear about it or know about it is that incident when we're out there, and maybe there's a legitimate production company there who's done everything right, but that neighborhood has been so impacted by filming, they see it as just another, problem production when in actuality they've done everything right. And so I think the big thing that has to happen here is education for people to report unpermitted filming. And once a location has been identified, because we keep track, we keep track of where we go out and where we cite people for unpermitted filming and where we get complaints referred to us from FilmLA or directly from the public, and we have we create our own little internal list of problematic locations that we increase our spot checks to make sure, hey guys, drive by there and see if you see any film production equipment out there. Because this seems to be a location that's constantly has some difficulty obtaining permits. So I think whatever approach is taken, I think a big component of that has to be reporting. And then the other thing is, you may have a location that's there's an absentee landlord that's not only leasing it out for filming, but for private parties, things that are not even covered in the film permit process that create a nuisance for the neighborhood. So from the neighbor's perspective, they see the location as this problem, but it may not all be filming. It may be a combination of other things as well.
So I don't want to create a law that we already have a law in the books for. Is there I'm concerned that you said you've cited folks. What are you citing?
We have one prior case where I look back when this motion first came out, and we have the 1222A13 of the municipal code is the code that says whether you're on private or public property, you have to have a film permit. That's the code for you need a film permit.
And so what would be the difference? Why in that particular case did you cite the owners of the property?
I don't have the specifics of that. I'd be guesstimating here because I wasn't the citing employee, but that was a location where the property owner, we have one prior case where the property owner was also cited.
Yeah, my thought was that we don't necessarily want to jump right in there with a misdemeanor crime, that we might want to give them like a warning, then an infraction, and then a misdemeanor. If they do it 3 times, if they haven't got it by then, that might be subject to. But Roger's running up here, so
John Wickham with the CLA's office.
Roger, John.
At the risk of really stepping into an area that I don't have full knowledge in, I think the planning code, the zoning code, has some by right authority for homeowners in terms of using their properties for filming. And so it may be that property owners are not cited because the zoning code allows the filming, and that's why the production companies are the ones that are receiving the citations from the police department. If it were a violation of the zoning code, then it would go to the building and safety department. And that's an area where there may be a complication in this.
Here's what I would recommend. Rather than send this back to council, I would recommend that we ask the city attorney to work with the CLA and Mr. Corrett's office to ferret this out and see what you can come up with, rather than send it on to council to approve something we're not even clear what it might be. Or I'm concerned. The city attorney has the city attorney done any analysis of this?
Not to our knowledge.
So that would concern me. I'd feel a lot more comfortable with their analysis.
Yeah, I don't mind doing that. I'm happy to work with the city attorney and the CLA to figure out the right way to approach
Okay,
it.
then maybe we can get a report back in a couple of months.
Well, I understand from my staff that the city attorney has been working with us, the city attorney's office, but the individual who worked with us on that item couldn't be here because of an illness in the family. So we could come back at your next meeting with the city attorney's representative to.
Then let me ask if Mr. Koretz, you can work with the CLA, the city attorney, and Marissa from my staff, so that we can get a better understanding of how to approach this. I don't know, I'm just a little uncomfortable moving forward without the city attorney weighing in at this point. If that's not a problem, then we'll just
No, that's fine.
So we can come back in 30 days since they're already working with you.
That's fine. Yeah,
Okay.
we can come back with 30 days
Okay.
with more of a fleshed out.
The next
ordinance.
meeting in proximity of 30 days.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I think there's a speaker card.
Oh, I'm sorry, we have a speaker card from Maya Zettler. Sorry about that, John. Roger.
Good afternoon, Maya Zettler on behalf of VICA, Valley Industry and Commerce Association. Thank you for letting me speak before you today. We have been studying this motion with our VICA Entertainment Committee and our VICA membership, and while we understand that there are a few habitual problematic households in the city, we were a little concerned when we first saw the motion about a citywide policy that would impact filming, especially at a time when we've been working so hard in the city of LA to help with increased incentives and a much stronger filming program to incentivize filming. We certainly don't want to see unpermitted filming in the city of Los Angeles, and we are concerned about unpermitted filming and the consequences that has on the residential community and the quality of life of the neighborhood surrounding that home. We would be supportive of a gradual program to take a look at this and then build up perhaps to a misdemeanor, but we just felt it was a little harsh to begin with that as a penalty. So we would be supportive of starting perhaps with a warning and then maybe a citation program. And we'll be happy to come back as well in 30 days and take a look at any of the changes that have been made.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on from there. Item number 2 is continued for 30 days. Items 6 through 9 and 11 through 12 are routine bids. We have no cards on those items. If Mr. Krikorian would agree, we can move those on consent. That is approved. Item number 1.
Item number 1 is a motion Garcetti Weston relative to the federal tax credit allocated to the city and the development of a mechanism to track the use of federal and state tax credits.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Cliff Weiss from the Community Development Department. I'm manager of the city's incentive zone programs. In regards to the motion, the higher credit that was offered through the IRS, that credit was taken. It doesn't involve an allocation per se. It's simply a credit that was offered to all employers throughout the country, as long as they hired qualified employees during the majority of the year 2010. That credit has since expired, and we don't know if that's going to be extended for this year. Because it's a credit that's taken on the federal tax return strictly between the employer and the IRS, there's no means for us to track that. That's typical of really all of the federal credits and deductions. The one area where we do currently track incentives is the State Enterprise Zone program, because businesses that take advantage of the hiring credits in that program have to go through the Community Development Department with an application, so we have statistics for the use of those credits, what the value is, what the average wage is, all of that type of thing. The fact that most of the credits and deductions that are taken by businesses through either the state programs or the federal programs, the fact that that information is not shared by either the Franchise Tax Board or the IRS has long been a frustration of ours. We have, and actually Congress has repeatedly asked the IRS to share that data. Currently, the IRS shares it in an aggregate fashion by state, which really doesn't tell the city of Los Angeles very much at all. The Franchise Tax Board does not aggregate and share the data at all. It's my belief that in either case, we would need state legislation or federal legislation to require those tax bodies to aggregate and share that information in some usable form.
What is the recommendation? Are we receiving and filing this, or is that your recommendation?
Yes, I don't have any other recommendation, yes.
Marissa, are we receiving and filing this motion? What are we doing? Huh? You can speak. Oh, okay, please.
Good afternoon, council members. I just wanted to shed a little bit of light in terms of the intent of the motion. In the city and trying to position itself as a job creator nationally, it's difficult to understand really the impact of federal policies and kind of really establish that clear connection between major cities that are the economic engines of the country with federal policies that are established, and how to best leverage our efforts. I think one of the discussions that is a key example of this is how we've done at drawing down the ARA funds. So just as that is done, how are we doing at drawing down like the federal tax credits? We understand that this may not be continued, but we still think that it's a good position to, if there's definitely nothing that CDD can do if the federal government isn't willing to comply and share information. So we're kind of stuck at a crossroads there. It's like, so what can we do? So while it may be the right thing to receive and file this, I think that there should be like a recommendation of follow-up in terms of like a direct communication with the federal government, either the Office of Urban Affairs, who they're always looking at ways to communicate with the cities about how can they improve their policies. And so, again, I commend CDD for coming in, shedding light on the issue. So I think the action would be to receive and file, but to also follow up with direct communication to the Office of Urban Affairs or directly to the president or whoever kind of established this initiative, as well as also look at, the tax credit has expired it hasn't been reintroduced, but also it's still out there. So for those businesses who did hire in 2010, are we making sure that they're taking advantage of it? So, one of the recommendations could also be working with Office of Finance to make sure that they're outreaching to these businesses, that they're aware of the credit that existed in 2010. Those are just some of the recommendations that I would give for the committees to think about.
I don't think it's an issue of the federal government's unwillingness. It's an issue of privacy, and opening the door of the IRS could open the door to many other actions. So, but I think what I would recommend, we can certainly receive and file this, and I think we should, but I would recommend that Mr. Garcetti, who made this motion, just send a letter to the federal government, the appropriate agency, maybe working with the CLA's office, and ask, is there a way to get even general information so that we can see how it's used. I don't know how you're going to overcome the problem of personal income tax, in this case for businesses, but if that's acceptable to you, I would encourage. I'd be happy to co-sign the letter.
Right, no, definitely.
But because I do understand the dilemma, we can't. We want to work with the federal government to encourage the use of the program, but we don't know how to encourage it, particularly for those who've already used it, because we don't know who they are and we don't know how it's being used, and but I don't know how we overcome the privacy issue.
I guess the follow-up then to that would be looking at if we're actually, what Office of Finance is doing to outreach for the 2010 credit, to make sure that our businesses are taking advantage of it. Right. And so I don't know.
Well, I'm sure they could provide a general report.
Right.
Maybe we can get that as a starter. So why don't we direct that the CLA draft a letter to be considered by the President of City Council, seeking advice from the federal government as to how we can get more information regarding employers in our jurisdiction that might have used these tax credits.
Okay.
Mr.
Yeah,
Kokorian.
I think you were going in the same direction I was thinking, Mr. Chairman, but the one caveat I would suggest is that a letter to the federal bureaucracies involved is likely to have very little impact. But a letter from the President of the Council to the Los Angeles congressional delegation is likely to have significantly more impact, because it's in the interests of the congressional representatives of Los Angeles to get that information as well, to be able to demonstrate that in fact they are ensuring that Los Angeles is getting its fair share of these incentives, and that it is in fact working to stimulate the local economy. So it's fine to send a letter into some cubicle in the federal government, but I think that where this is really going to bear fruit is by engaging our congressional delegation. The other part of this presentation, I think, that was very important to me is the idea of the outreach, and particularly to small businesses that might not have the government relations department that's already aware of these things. I think it's very important that the city make a thorough effort to ensure that our business community, and particularly in ethnic communities, in multiple languages and so on, are aware of the opportunities that are presented by the federal programs. So I don't know how we would move forward with that, Mr. Chairman, if that would be something that if this motion were to proceed or a different motion were to proceed, I would suggest that that it go along those lines, and particularly that we emphasize the outreach part.
Well, my recommendation was that we receive and file this motion, but direct the CLA to work with Mr. Garcetti on drafting a letter to the appropriate agency in the federal government. Maybe we should just send it to Ms. Hahn's office. Huh? Maybe that's premature, I don't know.
Including the congressional delegation. And then how about on the outreach part that was discussed? Is there some way that we can determine what the city is doing to provide outreach to our business community?
Sure, we can have the CLA work with CDD to get us information about that.
Councilman Krikorian, the Community Development Department has a number of business development managers around the city geographically in our regional offices who are very familiar with the empowerment zone, state enterprise zone incentives. When something like this comes up, we try to become aware of it and market that along with all the marketing we do for our existing programs. It's a little harder to sometimes get the information timely, but we do put it out there. We don't have a very big marketing budget, but we certainly do what we can to get the word out. Throughout the city, we currently have about 2,000 businesses that take advantage of the hiring credits through the Enterprise Zone program. It represents probably 3 to 5% of the total population of business owners that could take advantage of it. So we clearly have a long way to go, but we're doing what we can.
Okay, then the CLA knows what they're doing with this, right?
Yes.
Okay, that'll be the order. Item number 3.
Item number 3 is a motion Krikorian Garcetti relative to a film tax incentive that would provide a refund to productions that film a substantial portion of their project in the city.
Do we have a presenter on this? Mr. Krikorian, do you want to present on this? Or?
Well, I'll tee it up. I think we do have a representative of the CLA's office and also Film LA who will be presenting on this. But as they're coming up, let me just introduce it by saying that Film LA in recent press announcements described the uptick in production that we're having in the last year here in Los Angeles as being wholly attributable to the California Film and Television Production Tax Incentive. And this is an effort now to try to ensure that Los Angeles within California and also in competition with other urban areas is competitive by trying to identify whether there are additional tax incentive opportunities that we can provide locally to ensure that our production jobs stay here in Los Angeles. So this motion is merely an attempt to try to begin that dialogue, do the initial research and analysis about what options there may be for a local tax incentive, and that's what we're bringing forward here today.
Yeah, I would also like to point out that I have a motion pending. Hold on. No, that's not the motion. That is considering a refund of the sales tax. That was referred to the Business Tax Advisory Committee, and what I'd like to do is have these end up back at this committee at the same time so we can consider them in the full context.
I think that makes good sense.
Approval of the motion today would direct the Office of Finance to develop a report on the sales tax, on the business tax concept that is being proposed by Mr. Krikorian. At the same time, we will bring the sales tax information back. So I have no problem with this motion. We would ask the departments to report back in 60 days. By that time, the sales tax motion refund issue should be ready. If there's no objection, that would be the direction I would go. And we do have a public comment card.
I think that makes good sense. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so Maya Zutler?
Good afternoon, Maya Zutler on behalf of VICA, Valley Industry and Commerce Association. VICA has been very supportive of meaningful incentives to keep production within the City of Los Angeles. We've been working tirelessly over the years to support different incentive programs both at the state level and City of Los Angeles level. We thank Councilman Krikorian for introducing this motion, as we have seen that runaway production has been of serious concern to both the City of Los Angeles and the State of California. Through the recent study that has been released by Film LA, we have seen the incentive programs on the state level have been widely successful, and we look forward to implementing additional incentives here in the City of Los Angeles for television and film production, and we stand ready to support in any way that we can. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, this motion, we are taking the action to approve this motion and request departments to report back in 60 days. Item number 4.
Item number 4 is a motion Krikorian-Garcetti relative to the billing and refund process and factors associated with delays in providing refund payments to permitted productions with solutions to ensure more timely payment of refunds.
Somebody want to say something?
Just briefly, John Wickham with CLA's office. Over a long period of time, every so often the billing issue comes up in terms of returning refunds to the productions, and it's a sore spot. Obviously, people are due money, and there are some questions about. In the past, there were some actions that needed to happen over at Film LA. There have been a lot of reforms over there in the way that they handle things, so that they've really improved a lot of that services. So there are some departments in the city that, and especially in these times when there's a reduction in staff, there are greater difficulties that some of the departments are having in getting to the information in a timely manner. So this would be an opportunity to just kind of revisit all of that and see if there's a way to help the departments handle this more efficiently and effectively.
Unless John was so great that you don't have to say anything.
I have something to add. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Todd Linker, and I'm a vice president of Film LA. Film LA is extremely efficient in providing our refunds to production companies. We always do so within 30 days. That process, however, cannot begin until we receive final billing from the city departments. In the past, by and large, most of the delays had to do with the Department of Transportation. The Film LA, due to staff reductions and just a lack of manpower in DOT, recently offered to do some of the work of the department on their behalf. So we are, in essence, using their systems to bill ourselves so that we can clear the backlog of refunds that are due. As I understand, that's going very well. There are two areas where we are not able to handle our own billing. One is for the removal of signs, and the other is for DOT engineers. That has to be accomplished by DOT personnel, and any assistance there, I think, would help clear the backlog, and we can move forward with providing timely refunds. Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I think clearly there's been a lot of progress in this area, and that's really to be applauded. This is just an effort to kind of see if there's a way we can reinvent our systems a little bit to create even greater efficiency, and as we want to do with all businesses, but especially our heritage industry, send the signal to them that we are trying to be as business friendly as we can by ensuring the greatest degree of efficiency. And so this is just another opportunity to take a fresh look at it and see if there's additional systems that we can put in place to speed things up.
How do you want to handle this motion?
Councilman, adopting the motion in council will give the instruction to the departments to conduct the work, and yeah.
You want a formal report? A written report, or what what is it we're,
Yeah, I believe
It's important to have them come back to this committee with a report, and then...
we don't have to send it to council to ask them to come back with a report. I mean, that's all we're doing. Right? You're happy to come back, right, Film LA?
Some departments like to see an adopted motion.
It might be better for them to get a
Which
higher
department?
degree of cooperation if it's with the council instructions, so I would suggest that we...
I'll be happy to make a phone call if you tell me who doesn't want to tell me. We can pass a motion, that's fine, but, okay.
And then you would want the report back in 60 days?
Sure,
Okay.
sure. 60 days, okay?
That's great. Back to this committee.
Okay, then that matter is approved.
Thank you.
Item number 5.
Item number 5 is a Community Redevelopment Agency report relative to various actions for the renewal and expansion of the Greater Leimert Park Village, Crenshaw Corridor Business Improvement District.
Good afternoon,
Okay.
council members. Billy Chun with the CRA, and to my right is Margie Fanazia, also with the CRA, and she will walk us through this item.
Good afternoon. The motion before you is for the CRA to enter into a cooperation agreement with the Greater Leimert Park Village Crenshaw Corridor Business Improvement District in the amount of $45,000 for the renewal and expansion of the bid. The source of the funds for the contract will be $45,000 from 80% tax increment funds. The cooperation agreement between the CRA and the bid will spell out that we will reimburse the bid for work product completed by the bid consultant. Based upon achieved milestones. It's timely now for us to renew and expand the bid. There's a lot of current activity already going on with the bid. For instance, we're working on security and surveillance cameras in conjunction with the LAPD. They've also been working on a lot of marketing and outreach efforts. And more importantly, with the proposed bid boundaries, there's a lot of public funding going into the area. For example, there's about $14 million of Prop 1C funds that's been awarded to the CRA along the Crenshaw corridor. One of the requirements for the public improvements is for there to be a bid in place to maintain those public improvements. And so that's why the proposal is to encompass now 3 different CRA project areas, which is Mid-City, Crenshaw Mendon, and Crenshaw Slauson. So the bid consultant will ultimately determine which boundaries make sense, but this is why we think it's important now to not only renew the bid, but to also expand the bid boundaries. And I'll answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, I don't have any cards on this item, and I don't have any problems with it. Okay, that matter is approved.
Thank you.
We are now, I believe, at item number 10.
Do you have any other questions for?
Oh, it's the same thing.
It's
similar.
kind of the same structure, but for a different area. It's in a predominantly industrial area in one of our project areas called the Western Slauson project area, but it's kind of the same kind of mechanism that we hope to put in place.
The only difference is this is for the actual establishment of a bid. The previous one was for the renewal and expansion. This is for the brand new establishment.
Again, I have
of the
no cards on this indicating any objection. I assume Councilman Parks is okay with this. It's in his staff is nodding yes, so I have no problem with this. Mr. Krikorian concurs. Therefore, this matter is approved. We do have one more item. That's the public comment. I believe we're done. Hold on a second. Yes, we are. Antonio Ramirez.
Good afternoon. It's been a busy day. This is a matter of principle. My father used to work here for the city of Los Angeles. I come from a very regimented, structured life. I would first like to say, in the job sense, I would hope that you would hire first and foremost military veterans and their families. That's number one. And I would also like you to adopt the ex-mayor of Anaheim, Kurt Pringle's approach, and that is freedom friendly. Orange County used to be really a really just stoic, conservative, rude, and ruthless. But Mayor Kurt Pringle changed all that. He brought his beautiful, contagious smile and just an outstanding person. He brought genuine politeness. And the three elements that I was brought up as a child: you edify, instill, and enhance. You edify, instill, and enhance. Now, I don't know Mr. Corian, but I'm going to try to bring out the best of that man. I'm going to find out what it is. The same with Mr. Alarcon, and the same with all the others. There are some things that I may not like about certain people, but the way I was raised is, how do I find your talents? Well, that's how I was raised. And I'm sorry to say, I'm very disappointed for the most part with my race. The Latino police officers, I'm sorry, are very undesirable. But that's their badge and it's their tarnished reputation, because the only thing you take to your grave is your name. You hire people that will follow through on everything. Be responsive to people's needs and wants. And I can recommend a movie called Tokyo Love Story. This is about Japanese. They are number one when it comes to customer service, quality control, excellence. The Japanese are number one. Why? I had the privilege of living in Japan, and they taught me so much. Their contagious personalities, their love for life, but it also stems from their Buddhism and their Shinto. But I hope that you will adopt that, please.
Thank you very much. I have no other cards. This meeting is adjourned.